When one is horrible, it means that there is nothing that is objectively good and progressive that will come out of such individual.
If you have been convicted of an offense before and you have been pardoned, and anybody is trying to bring that up against you and calling you a convict, you have the power to sue that person for defamation.
Justice must not only be done, but it must be seen by all to have been manifestly done.
Every citizen has a right and every citizen has an obligation.
That a plea of ultra-virus acquit or convict is very different from the plea of pardon.
Trespass is that act that interferes with the peaceful.
No matter how minute this,
right? No matter how minute.
Who comes to equity must come with clean hands. Hello out there, you are welcome to another fresh episode of the program Justifying Nigeria on ACNN television, reaching you from Abuja. On today's episode, our subject of discussion will be on the legal concept of murder part 2. My name is Anozechi Nomso, your anchor. In the legal sense, the first degree homicide is murder. Section 316 of the Criminal Code Act defines murder as follows. Except as hereinafter set forth, a person who unlawfully kills another under any of the following circumstances, that is to say, if the offender intends to cause the death of the person killed or that of some other person, if the offender intends to do to the person killed or to some other person some grievous harm, if the death is caused by means of an act done in the prosecution of an unlawful purpose, which act is of such a nature as to be likely to endanger human life. If the offender intends to do grievous harm to some person for the purpose of facilitating the commission of an offense, which is such that the offender may be arrested without warrant, or for the purpose of facilitating the fight of an offender who has committed or attempted to commit any such offense. If death is caused, administering any stupefying, overpowering things for either of the purposes last aforementioned. If death is caused by willful stopping the breath of any person for either of such purposes, is guilty of murder. In all this, what is the position of the law when one kills another by ignorance or mistake? Can establishment of attempted rape be a defense in murder? What happened when the person killed happened to be a serial killer? With me in the studio to address all this is Barrister Emmanuel Omole. He's a first-class graduate of Nigerian Law School 2017-2018 session, head of chambers of Nakudu Law Partners here in Abuja, and grounded in prominent practice of corporate consultancy and litigation, such as sports, entertainment, aviation, and criminal law. He's also passionate about social change and government accountability, and also a member of Unity by here in Abuja. You are welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to see you again.
Yes. Sir.
Now, we in our previous episode we have talked about what murder is all about, but just in summary, for us to refresh the minds of our viewers who may not be non-lawyers, what is murder? Simplicity. What is murder?
Okay. First of all, before I break it down, I'd like to say that murder is a legal concept that is predominant in southern Nigeria under the criminal code. In the northern Nigeria, it's not necessarily called murder. It is called culpable homicide punishable with death.
In the south, take it again.
In the south, it is called murder.
Okay.
In the north, it is called culpable homicide punishable with death. Okay. I know it's a longer name, but those are two different concepts, though very similar in their framework. Okay. The first thing we need to know about murder, it is a capital offense. Now in Nigeria, there are very few offenses that are capital in nature. By capital offense, I mean offenses that carry a maximum punishment of death. Usually, when a crime is committed, the most prevalent punishment is imprisonment or fine. But there are certain offenses that are deemed to be extremely grievous as to warrant the death penalty as the maximum punishment, and one of such is murder. Now, murder
or culpable homicide, in the north.
It's too long for me to start. So the issue with murder is simply that it rests in the intention of the person. Now, murder is simply causing the death of a person with the intention to cause the death. If to fully understand murder, you would need to split it into its three component elements.
Okay.
The three elements of
Number
murder.
one. Yes.
The first is that somebody died. Without showing that somebody died, you can't start dragging someone to prison or to court for murder. You have to show that there was a death. You have to show that there was a dead body. This is the person that died. Secondly, you need to show that the death of that person was caused by the person you are accusing.
Okay.
That's what we call causation.
Okay.
Was caused either by his act or by his omission.
By acts or omission?
Yes.
I can understand act, but talk about omission. Okay, talk about act and omission.
Now,
for the betterment of our viewers.
Act is usually positive in nature.
Yes.
That means me doing something to cause your death. So if I attack you with a machete, I know you are strong enough to defend yourself, but presumably if I attack you with a machete and I succeed, I have done an act to cause your death. But omission is a bit more subtle. Omission is in the respect that there is a duty that I owe you, and I failed in that particular duty and it caused your death. That means my omission had led
Example.
to your death. An example is you have a child, an infant child in your house. Okay. And then you come out with the child and you leave the child on the express, or you are with the child in, let's say, a beach where there's an ocean, and you intentionally take the child close to the water and then you leave the child and you start going on your own. Not that you forgot, but you knew what you wanted to achieve. If they can prove that you intentionally left that child there, and at the end of the day the ocean came and swept away the child and the child
so
died,
that duty
that you
have
failing
omitted
to execute that duty of care over the child with that intention, knowing that this will be the possible consequence, the ocean sweeping him away.
So that
means you caused that child's death by your omission. You didn't necessarily kill the child, but due to your omission, you caused the death.
So murder can be established
so
on
that?
that?
Can charge you for murder.
That's
and then the final element, which is the most interesting, is the mens rea, as we call it in Latin.
Please bring it down.
Mens rea means that intention, that intentional element. The fact that you either knew that this person was going to die, or you knew that death was the most likely consequence of your action. Once they can establish these three elements, then you would be sentenced by the court for murder. So
and the capital offense, the capital punishment is death.
Yes, the maximum. I intentionally use the word maximum.
Death.
Because yes, the law usually puts it in a discretionary way. Because the law usually says a maximum punishment of death, which means the court, seeing whatever defense you put out, seeing the circumstances of the case, may want to give a certain amount of years imprisonment or life imprisonment. That now leaves it at the discretion of the court. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, are there available legal defenses in terms of offense of murder?
Yes, they are. They are actually. If you remember your definition of murder, yes, the first line of that law was save as hearing after.
Yes,
you understand?
Yes.
So that.
But you have to explain it to our viewers now. So
that particular clause.
Which clause is that? Save and accept.
Save, yes, and accept hearing after otherwise stated.
Good.
Yes, that clause means that ordinarily a man should be held culpable for murder once these three elements have been proved. However, that now leaves a loophole where exceptions can now flow through. That place, that particular line states that if there is any other law that provides for circumstances that can possibly exonerate somebody, then the person should be duly exonerated. So it's that one line at the beginning of that law that now creates a very small space for little defenses to start passing through. Yes. So there are several defenses. One of them is alibi, which is usually the most interesting defense in criminal law. An alibi is simply, I was not there.
Oh,
that
this one, alibi,
yes,
I was not there.
It's as simple as that. That the accused was not there as at the time the murder was said to have been committed.
Illustration,
So,
for example, there's a mother and I've been charged, and I was said that as at that time it was committed, I was in Lagos.
Exactly.
And something happened in Abuja.
Exactly. If the hospital come out and say, this man was killed by virtue of the blood stains and the forensic report and everything, he was shot as between 8:05 and 8:15 p.m. in the night. And then they check and they see that you were in a different state, or even in a different country
as at that
particular time.
Yes.
Then it is not possible. No matter how they prove these other elements of intention and all those, it doesn't.
And it's a complete defense.
It exonerates you completely. It exonerates you completely. The court will not even consider any.
No, Counsel, this is becoming interesting. Please, you continue and this will come back from break. Please, viewers, do join us again. Hi, you're welcome to another segment of The Speaker on ACNN Television, reaching from Abuja. On today's segment, we are looking at the forward Nigeria or backward Nigeria. My name is Anozie Chinomso. The word forward simply means an advancement of a person or thing from one place to a higher destination. When forward is mentioned or present in any environment, progress, development, joy, healthy human relationship, and peaceful coexistence are all inevitable. Despite how interesting the above word forward may be, same cannot be said about backwardness. This is because in a backward environment, there is always unproductivity, lack of vision and mission, and of course, an epileptic economic growth. With the kind of sad and barbaric things that are happening in Nigeria, I'm moved to ask on whether we are living in a forward Nigeria or backward Nigeria. When dividends of democracy is not constitutionally and equally shared to all the federating states and units, is an example of a backward Nigeria. When it has become obvious that Nigeria of yesterday is far better than Nigeria of today, is a perfect example of a backward Nigeria. In a situation where the Senate President Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan told Nigerians and indeed the whole world that Nigeria is a poor country, and as such, borrowing money from an outside consortium to run the government cannot be dispensed with, is a perfect example of a backward Nigeria. In a situation where President Muhammad Buhari approved a whooping sum of 37 billion naira for the renovation of National Assembly complex, while only 48 billion naira was allocated to education, is a clearer pointer to the fact that we are living in a backward Nigeria. Where an Islamic cleric, Sheikh Gumi, who was a captain of the Nigerian army, is telling the federal government to stop killing bandits and the school remain unsafe until government negotiates with bandits, is a clearer pointer to the fact that we are living in a backward Nigeria. Where the president of Northern Consensus Movement, NCM, Dr. Awal Abdullahi, placed a 100 billion bounty on Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, is an misplacement of priority, because such price tag should be placed on the heads of terrorists and bandits who are killing Nigerians, kidnapping and raping our women and young girls. In a situation where 18 local government areas out of 23 local government areas in Benue State have been taken over by Fulani killing henchmen, is a clearer pointer to the fact that we are living in a backward Nigeria. The belief that Nigeria can develop herself and grow a strong economy by borrowing money from an outside consortium is totally misguided. How can it be that Nigeria is the largest producer of oil in Africa and also ranked 6th in the world, and yet our dear Senate President is referring Nigeria as a poor state? How can it be that with all these huge mineral and natural resources that we have in Nigeria, we cannot still feed ourselves? How can it be that our dear president promised us that in 2015, if he's elected into power, that he will stop Boko Haram and silence the guns. 6 years down the line, Boko Haram has given birth to bandits, unknown gunmen, killer henchmen, and the guns are now roaring more than that of a lion. How can it be that our politicians promise that they cannot do and does what they did not promise? How can it be that Nigeria produce oil and yet not even one functional refinery could be found in Nigeria? How can it be that Nigeria is meant to be a land of opportunities and yet Nigerian young graduates are messing and bricklayers because of lack of jobs and massive growth of unemployment? How can it be that our young men and women who are supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow are dying in the deserts and Mediterranean Sea? How can it be that peace, love, unity, and harmony in Nigeria once enjoyed has suddenly turned to bitterness, tribal hatred, myopism, and self-aggrandizement? How can it be that Nigerians seem to be both naturally and spiritually confused? And because we are spiritually confused, that is why the God we worship has turned his ear on the other side, so that when we pray and fast, he does not listen. Or if he listens, he does not care. He's waiting for us to realize ourselves, acknowledge our sins, and repent of them, so that we may have a healthy land and become prosperous in life. I still believe that Nigeria can be great again when we have leaders who have conscience and positive thinking on how Nigeria can move forward. In order to justify Nigeria, I therefore speak until we all join our hands and work together, regardless of where you come from, having in mind that the sustainability of any nation is dependent on how the current generation will set a good legacy for the future generation, serve in humility, honesty, sincerity, shun violence and obnoxious character which may create hatred, bitterness, and unnecessary rancor. We shall continue to live in a backward Nigeria instead of a forward Nigeria. My name is Intoxication. I just want to speak. Hello, glad that you are still there, and we are still here in the studio with Barrister Emmanuel Omole. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And before we went on break, you are trying to establish the issue of alibi. That is one of the defenses of murder. Please take it up from there.
Yes. So once they have been successfully able to prove that you were not at the scene of the crime,
especially within the specified
time the crime was said to have been committed, then even if you hated the person and you had all intention to kill the person, and the person is your worst enemy, and the person can brought all the whole sons and all the whole sons. Exactly, you have sworn up and down that you are going to kill him. That defense automatically avails you.
Complete defense.
Complete defense. Another complete defense that would avail you if you can successfully prove it is self-defense.
Why do you now have to say successful, unlike alibi? Why is yes? Please
alibi
explain.
Is a bit more automatic. Self-defense is a bit more complicated. I will get back to self-defense. Let me run through the other possible defenses.
Okay.
There is the defense of intoxication. The defense of intoxication is not necessarily a complete defense. It's an incomplete defense.
Okay, that means there are two types of defense in criminal law. There's complete and incomplete. So example of incomplete is intoxicated.
So usually the idea behind incomplete defenses is that these defenses that you raised, they are not strong enough to exonerate you. But they are also not so insignificant as to sentence you to death.
Okay.
So yes, it will exonerate you, but it won't exonerate you totally. So usually what the courts do is that they do a bit of stepping down. There is an offense that is called manslaughter in the south, and culpable homicide not punishable with death in the north. Yes, so that particular offense is not a capital offense. It's usually imprisonment. So when you successfully establish an incomplete defense, the court will step it down for you and sentence you to prison. Now, an example of an incomplete defense, as I said earlier, is intoxication. Okay. Intoxication showing that as at the time the crime was committed, you were not having your full presence of faculty when you committed the offense. Another one, which also affects your faculty too, is provocation. Now, provocation works in a way that you were so emotional, your emotions were so out of place that you couldn't properly be said to have been in the right frame of mind to take certain decisions. And then you went ahead to kill somebody, usually out of anger, because Nigerians are very angry people when they want to be. So out of anger, you strike somebody with a weapon or something, you can prove provocation, that that person did something or a certain set of things to spike your emotion level up to the point that you had lost your faculty. Now, if you notice, most of these defenses that are incomplete go to the faculty, because what they do is that they affect the third element of murder, which is the mens rea, that intention. So they paint a picture of this man did not have full intention. So it's like,
but the accessories is there.
It's there. So it's like you scored 2.5 over 3 instead of 3 over 3 to prove murder. You scored 2.5. So they can't let you go because you scored 2.5.
No.
Exactly. But at the same time, they can't sentence you to death because you didn't score 3 over 3. So they will step it down for you. That's what I meant by stepping down.
And that's what I mean, it's incomplete.
Exactly.
Now you say you are going back to self-defense.
Now, for self-defense.
Which is a complete defense.
Self-defense is a complete defense. Now, self-defense is quite complicated because there are so many factors. Now, I'm going to build it like a story. Now, whenever an incident happens and it causes the death of someone, the first thing that happens is that the police are called to the scene of the crime to identify the body and to effect whatever arrest.
Is that what people call locus inco, visits of locus inco?
Well, in criminal law, it's called locus criminis.
Okay, locus
inco is for civil cases. Yeah.
Then locus criminis.
It's called locus criminis.
All right,
the scene
so
of the crime.
Our viewers, you have heard that.
It costs money.
Yes.
So once the police effects the arrest, what usually happens is that you enter the police station and you are interrogated. During your interrogation, to know what happened and what transpired, because the thing about murder is that there's no accuser. You understand? There's only the accused and the circumstances. So there's nobody to say, he punched me, he hit me. No, the person is dead. So they have to conduct a full-scale interrogation and interview of the person to understand the circumstances behind the murder. Now, usually during the interrogation, you are given time to speak, and you're also given a form sheet to put down a statement. Now, that putting down of this statement is a window for you to start pleading this particular defense. If you miss this window, and then you go to court, and you want to start crying before the court that it was self-defense, the court will ask you, did you say it when you were first caught? The court will read and analyze your statement. Once the court sees that you did not raise this defense at the first instance when you were arrested, the court will be inclined to disregard. So the first thing you will need to do is plead it at the police station that it was self-defense. The second thing is you have to admit. It's very tricky because usually your lawyer will say, no, don't say you killed him before. You understand? But for the defense to work, it's like a risk. It's like you're gambling. For the defense to work, you have to admit to the murder that, yes, I killed him. But. So if you don't admit to the murder and you are fishing for other defenses, that's no intoxication, no provocation, and then tomorrow you come as the court will say you are just fishing. Even though the court will analyze it, the court will not be inclined to take it. So first, plead the self-defense. Secondly, admit it. Now, when the matter gets to court, there are certain considerations the court will make. The first consideration is that, was your life in danger? You know, by the time you are even pleading this defense, the prosecution must have pleaded his entire case, put out all his evidence. The court now decides to ask you to plead a defense, you then plead a defense that is self-defense. The first thing the court will analyze is, was your life in danger? If your life was not in danger, like immediate danger, if your life was not in danger, then you can't plead self-defense.
Self-defense.
That's the first thing. Okay, yes, your life was in danger. The second question they will ask you, that's the law, is, did you have an alternative means of escape?
Okay, if it's established that your life is in danger.
Yes, your life is in danger.
We agree. So is there any other alternative?
Was there an alternative means of escape? If your life is in danger, someone is coming to attack you with a knife or a gun. There's a door here, there's a door here. You not go and kill the person and say your life is in danger. Because the law would say there was an escape route here, there was an escape route here. Why didn't you take it? Those are the questions. So it's not such an easy defense to just shout self-defense.
That's why you are like, if you can successfully...
If you can pass all these hurdles, then it can exonerate you. If not, then I'm sorry about that. So when you cross whether your life is in danger, cross whether
alternative
there was a means of escape, there's now the final hurdle, which is what we call proportionality. The court will now check whether your action was proportionate to the attack that was coming to you. If I'm carrying my shoe and say, you are a stubborn man, I want to hit you, you remove a knife and stab me, the court will say, no. Even if you shout, my life was in danger, they say, he was holding a shoe. The worst he would have done was to beat you with the shoe. And you removed the knife and stabbed him, and you said, my life was in danger, self-defense.
It's making sense. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Now, yes, we know about this issue of mistake of law and mistake of fact. Yeah. We are just having a few minutes. Maybe it's like we're going to bring you back now so that you do later. But now, please, this mistake of law and fact, what does it mean?
It's a very simple
Okay, what does... Okay.
In fact, the explanation lies in the name.
Okay.
If there is a mistake as to the law, and if there's a mistake as to the fact.
Okay.
You know, there are facts and there are laws.
Okay.
Laws are established. So when you do an act and claim that, I didn't know that it was against the law, it said you are pleading a mistake of law. You mistake.
It's not an excuse.
That's the implication. I wanted to explain before I tell you the implication.
Okay.
So it's simple. You're saying that you did not know that what you were doing was against the law. Mistake of fact is stating that you misread the circumstances and you did not know that you were in apprehensive danger. Using self-defense, for instance, if the person coming to you was maybe wearing a dark cloth in a dark room, so you were not sure whether the person was holding a weapon, but the way the person was speeding to you, you felt you were in danger, but you were not sure whether he was holding a weapon. Maybe he was moving like this, and you said you thought it was a knife, but it was a pen or a pencil. You understand?
Okay.
So
that's
a mistake
fact.
of fact. You mistook the facts and the circumstances. Now, the implication is that mistake of fact can help your defense. So if you are pleading self-defense, you can plead mistake of fact that you couldn't misread it. But mistake of law, there's no...
is that why we say ignorance of law is no excuse?
Ignorance of the law it's not an excuse.
Okay,
so it behooves on all citizens to even know the law, so that you don't... And that's the beauty of this program, and that is why we appreciate always coming here to educate the citizens, because you can't come tomorrow and say, Barrister Anoze did not tell me, I didn't know. It can't avail you.
Thank you very much. Now, in less than 1 minute, please, this story of one Chidinma killing Mr. Yusuf Atag and all that. Yes, in the confessional statement of that lady, she said that she saw the issue of the disease, wanted to rape him. The question is, does allegation of rape exonerate somebody from crime of murder?
It doesn't. What she was most likely doing is pleading rape as a help to establishing self-defense. So it was not necessarily, people should not call it an allegation of rape, because an allegation of rape is saying that she is reporting or establishing a charge of rape against the person. The person is dead. She can't do that. So she was pleading a defense. It's not called an allegation of rape. What she wrote there is that she's pleading a defense of immediate harm. But now there's the problem. Was it an immediate harm to her life? So you see, she has to cross all these hurdles
you explained
before she can
That would be a
succeed.
story for another day.
Yes.
Please, what's your last advice to the viewer before we call it a day?
My last advice to the viewers is like what I was saying earlier. This is a program you shouldn't take for granted, because every day we're faced with circumstances in life that would lead us to make certain decisions that might be questionable. So it is important that you at least know the basic principles of law so that you can easily navigate your life. So that it is not when it happens, you start looking for a lawyer. We enjoy preventive measures rather than punitive measures.
Enjoy preventive measures rather than punitive measures. Want to appreciate you for coming,
so
Barrister. And I know when next we call you out of your busy schedule, please try to make yourself available.
I'll definitely
Thank you very
avail myself.
much.
Thank you so much.
As law-abiding citizens of Nigeria, it is expected of us to live a godly and quality life. In a situation where people resort to self-help in order to settle a dispute does not hold water in law at all. However, if your life is in danger and there is a probable cause and objective belief in which a reasonable man will perceive that the actions of the disease would have led to your death and there is no other means of escape, it is reasonable and justified in law that you protect yourself in self-defense. This submission is in pari material with the provisions of Section 59 of the Penal Code, which provides that nothing is an offense of which is done in the lawful exercise of the right of private defense. Do you think now that the Bible supports self-defense when it provides in Genesis chapter 9 verse 6 that whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for the image of God he made man? I then leave you with your thoughts. This is where we draw the curtain on today's episode of Justifying Nigeria. Join us same time, same station, another fresh episode of the program. Until then, this is Anos H&M, so urging you to be law-abiding citizen, and bye for now. When one is horrible, it means that there is nothing that is objectively good and progressive that will come out of such individual.
If you have been convicted of an offense before and you have been pardoned, and anybody is trying to bring that up against you and calling you a convict, you have the power to sue that person for defamation.
Justice must not only be done, but it must be seen by all to have been manifestly done.